Hello there, and thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is John Hathaway, and I'm going to be starting a new series today. This is going to be episode 1 about kind of my story of going into fundamentalist Christianity and then kind of leaving that fundamentalist version of Christianity and where I'm at today. So we're going to be talking about that. I am kind of putting a pause on my other series, Unmasking Religion, for the moment, just because I kind of have some ideas for that, but I'm not really sure what direction to continue going on that series. So I'm just kind of pausing that for the moment, but I do plan to pick it up later on. But for right now, I thought that this would be a good time to kind of give you guys a little bit of background of my story, of where I'm coming from, kind of how I grew up, and then my journey into fundamentalist Christianity, because I spent over 10 years in the independent fundamental Baptist movement in various different churches, about 3 or 4 different independent fundamental Baptist churches. So yeah, I spent probably 10, 11 years in that denomination, and then I wound up leaving at the end of 2020. And then now I'm kind of just exploring, kind of trying to, I'm not I wouldn't necessarily call it deconstructing, because I think that has a lot of labels attached to that terminology. I'm not leaving the faith or leaving Christianity. I'm not becoming an atheist. So just to be clear and upfront about that, I'm not abandoning the Bible or abandoning Jesus or anything like that. I definitely believe that Jesus was God, and that he's, I believe probably all the doctrines that you believe about Jesus, about that he was 100% man, 100% God, all that good stuff. So let's just get that out of the way before I start this, because I know that there's going to be a lot of assumptions if I don't start off with saying that. So anyway, so we're going to be talking about my journey into and out of fundamentalist Christianity, and then kind of my journey towards more spiritual awakening, enlightenment, and things like that, where I'm at today. So if you enjoy this channel, if you've been watching some of my videos, and if you enjoy the content, just please be sure to give me a thumbs up on this video. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithms to help this channel grow. Also, comments definitely help. So if anything stood out to you that I said, I appreciate it if you would just mention that, or give your feedback to this channel. That really helps, and I would really appreciate that. Also, if you're new to this channel, and if you like this video, and if you wind up watching any other videos on my channel and you like what you see, please make sure that you subscribe. That really helps. And hit that bell, the notification bell, so that you don't miss any future content. With that being said, we're going to get started with episode 1, talking about my story. So, like I said, I did spend a good portion of time in the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement, or IFB, as some people call it. If you're not sure what that is, basically, so there's I don't know how many different denominations or branches of Baptists that there is. Probably in the thousands if I had to guess, but maybe it's just in the hundreds. But I know that there's a lot of them out there. You have Southern Baptist, Reformed Baptist, Missionary Baptist, Free Will Baptist, and then the one that I was a part of for over 10 years was the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement. And basically what the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement is, what they're trademarked by, is they are known for being they claim that they're completely autonomous. Each church, one of the reasons they call themselves independent, that they have that name, is because they say that they don't report to any particular denomination, that each local church is their own governing body, and they make their own rules and that they govern themselves and things like that. But I've I've actually realized that that's not entirely true. I mean, it is technically speaking, but because they don't have like a hierarchy of like a bishop or whatever that oversees multiple churches, but in a practical sense, they essentially are no different than other Baptist churches like the Southern Baptist churches and a lot of other ones that where like if you wind up preaching something slightly different than what the rest of the group believes, then you become an outcast. So and you lose support from other churches and things like that. So it's essentially kind of the same, but it's just the structure, the organizational structure is a little bit different. But like independent fundamental Baptists, they're known for being like having like really high standards for living, like really high dress standards, like women don't wear pants. If you're like a true independent fundamental Baptist church, I know that there are some independent Baptist churches that maybe they don't really identify so much with the fundamental label part of it. They might just call themselves an independent Baptist church. And I would call those churches like IFB Light or something like that. And with some of those churches, maybe they're a little bit more loose on those standards. Like they don't care so much about if women wear pants, but maybe they would still prefer that they wear dresses to church and things like that. They might be a little more lax on like the music standards. Like you can listen to some contemporary Christian music, just don't listen to any like Christian rock, or don't listen to worldly secular music and stuff like that. They're also big on like not going like mixed bathing with where men and women are swimming together if they're like not husband and wife, if they're not, or if they're not related to each other and stuff like that. And then all kinds of other like legalistic stuff. So that's kind of what the independent fundamental Baptist movement is known for. As far as like their theology, they believe in like that they believe like once saved, always saved, eternal security for the most part, and like basically they believe that once you profess Jesus Christ, you confess him as your Lord and Savior, you accept him into your heart, you're born again, however you want to label it. Once that happens, you have this one-time experience of being born again or being saved. Then it's basically done, and it's one and done. You're on your way to heaven, and you don't even have to worry about like living righteously. But they'll still come down hard on standards and things like that, because they'll use these other things like you won't get God's blessings if you don't live this certain way. You'll miss out on some eternal rewards in heaven, or getting to rule with Christ and things like that. So that's kind of just the independent fundamental Baptist movement in a nutshell. Now, before I get into like my time in the independent fundamental Baptist church, I'll give you a little bit of background of like how I grew up and stuff. So I grew up, I was homeschooled. My family, we didn't really like belong to any certain denomination or church. We weren't members of any particular church. My dad he worked for the federal government. He wound up having to move a lot because of his job. So like we spent time outside of the United States on some foreign assignments that my dad had. So we lived overseas for quite a few years of my life, and then spent some time in the States as well. But due to like a lot of the moving and relocation and stuff like that, and then also just due to the nature of like my dad's job, a lot of it was required like some confidentiality, and like not really disclosing a lot about what he does to neighbors and things like that, fellow Christians, unless like your family or you are really close to them, you trust them. But But there was a lot of that. So we didn't really like, at least for most of my childhood, we never really like went to a church consistently, like, I mean, like every Sunday or anything like that. There were churches that we would visit repeatedly, but it would usually be like maybe one Sunday a month or maybe every other Sunday. And then sometimes it was even less frequent than that. Like it would be maybe um, like 5 or 6 times a year, or maybe just like once every other month or something like that. So it wasn't really like we didn't really have a consistent like church membership or um, time that we would visit churches and stuff like that. And like we went to Mennonite churches a lot growing up, which they're even like more legalistic and conservative than the Independent Fundamental Baptist. They're practically like one step away from being Amish. The only, like, probably the only functional difference between the Mennonites and the Amish was that, like, the Mennonites could use some modern technology, or they could use, like, they could drive cars, they could use stuff that required electricity, they could have electricity in their homes, but they still weren't allowed to have, like, TVs or, like, video games. I think a lot of them, like, even uh, required, like if I think you could have like a landline phone in your house, but there was a lot of restrictions and legalisms and stuff like that when it came to like having your own cell phone, even if it was just like a flip phone, which most of the time when I was growing up, that's all you had was like flip phones and the old Nokia phones and stuff like that. So that was maybe like the head of the household, the husband could have a cell phone because he would be out and about doing whatever he did to do to make money for the house, to be as the breadwinner of the household and stuff like that. And then you had a landline at home, so the mother, the wife, could contact him if needed, and things like that. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like what the Mennonites were like, at least the brand of Mennonites that I spent time around, and my family. We did get to know some of them. I became uh, kind of, I don't know if I'd say good friends, but I did have some friends in the Mennonite church, in that Mennonite community, because they were like, some of them were our neighbors. We would go and help them out with like different farm work and helping them out with their animals and picking corn and things like that. And they would come over and we would have like barbecues at each other's houses and things like that. Um, but like, I always felt uncomfortable in their churches because it was like super legalistic, and like you would there was like no instruments allowed. Men and women had to sit on opposite sides of the aisle in church. So you had one side of pews in the church. On the right side of the aisle, it would be like all men, and then the left side would be all women. And then, um, yeah, things like that. And then you didn't even really like see much of like men and women like interacting with each other in church, like inside the church building. Besides maybe before and after the service, maybe a husband would say something to his wife or something like that, or a brother to his sister. But there wasn't like a whole lot of interaction between like the men and the women. Um, now, so I spent, I don't know, I guess we probably spent like 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit longer, um, going to this Mennonite church. And I think my dad eventually um, kind of saw some inconsistencies and some double standards and things like that with them. And so we kind of distanced ourselves from them, while like my sister, one of my older sister, wanted to keep going. So she would still go to the church, I think regularly, like at least one Sunday, at least every Sunday, or like every other Sunday, while we wouldn't go. The rest of the family would only go maybe 1 or 2 Sundays. I mean, one Sunday a month or one Sunday every other month, something like that. And to be honest, like at that point, I was very glad that we didn't have to go to that church because I really didn't enjoy it anyway. Now, fast forward, as I became a teenager, like especially around the time I turned like 15, I started becoming like a lot more interested in girls and like wanting to talk to girls, wanting to have a girlfriend, stuff like that. And obviously, I was pretty young for that. I mean, to like start dating or anything, and I didn't start dating that early, but mainly because I was too afraid to talk to any girls. But we started to go to some other churches, and this is when I first became introduced to independent fundamental Baptist churches. So we went to one in southeast Missouri, where we were living at the time. This was right before my dad's second foreign assignment that we had in South America. But at the time we were living in like southern Illinois, which was right across the Mississippi River from this town in southeast Missouri. So we went to a church there for a while. We started visiting there, and I honestly it was different. It was a lot different than the Mennonite church that we went to for a while, but to me it was a breath of fresh air because I was down with this. They seemed to be pretty true to the Bible. They still use the King James Version, which I grew up in a King James only household. We only had the King James Version of the Bible, and I was always basically taught that if you used any other version of the Bible, that you're being deceived, and that there's words in the other translations that were edited and taken out and removed for various purposes to try to distort the gospel or distort the word of God and stuff like that. But this independent fundamental Baptist church that we went to, it seemed like, okay, it was nicer. It was nice because the people weren't as legalistic. The girls didn't have to wear these head coverings like at the Mennonite church. All the women had to wear head coverings where they most of their hair couldn't be seen, and because they took a passage out of 1 Corinthians 11, I think, that talks about that, and applied it literally. So they basically took it as all women have to do that for all time, or at least if you're a Christian. But the Baptists didn't take that verse as literal or something that we still do to this day. So, or they would translate it a different way to be saying the covering is only long hair on a woman. So, which seems convenient. But anyway, I digress. So we went to this church. I enjoyed it. Made a couple friends there. We still didn't get super close to them because we wound up moving to South America that same year for my dad's second foreign assignment. We lived down in South America for a few years. Visited some churches off and on. We met some missionaries that were part of some different independent Baptist churches, and I think some of them might have known some of the people that we knew from those churches, or went to the same Bible college and stuff. So we made some friends there with them. I still know some of them to this day, and they're good people. Definitely don't have any hard feelings. And I think that probably those missionaries that I know, I would say they're probably on a lot less of the legalistic side of the independent Baptist movement. They probably wouldn't even fall into the category of fundamental because, I follow them on Facebook and they seem like they're, very, not in a bad way. They're very, just up with the times and things like that. They're not stuck in this religious fundamentalist way of thinking of having women having to always wear dresses and things like that. And they seem like they're genuinely good people and all that. So I don't know how far I want to go. I'm probably not going to keep this over like 25 minutes. So I'll probably just give a little bit more, like maybe start to go into like my born again experience. But anyway, so we were in South America. We started going to these churches. My brother winds up going to a Bible college in Tennessee, and while we're still living there in South America, and I think he was going there for about 2 years, and then my dad's foreign assignment was coming to an end, so um, he was thinking about retiring at the time, so he wound up buying this house in eastern Tennessee, kind of close to where my brother was going to Bible college, because we really liked that area of Tennessee when we visited him, the Smoky Mountains and all that. So my dad decided to buy a house there. Now my older sister and I uh, wound up leaving a little bit early. My dad had us go up there to kind of get the house ready that he bought, because he bought the house basically online, and stuff like that, without actually physically going there, um, and like while we were still in South America. So we wound up moving into that house. My brother, he had just finished his um, spring semester at that Bible college, so he moved in there with us at the same or he might have actually gone into that house a little bit before we did, but we all basically moved there around the same time as he was getting out of Bible college. And then we wound up, just since the three of us were there before the rest of my family got back to the States, we started visiting some different churches. And my dad wanted us to visit like a couple different denominations, and that's fine. I don't see anything wrong. Back then, I kind of like was a little bit like, okay, this is dumb or whatever. But now I think that there probably was actually some wisdom in that. And so we would visit, like one Sunday we would visit an independent Baptist church, and then one Sunday we would visit a Mennonite church, and maybe we would visit, like, I don't know if one of them was a Southern Baptist church or something like that, but we visited like a few different churches. Like we would, and there was one church that really stood out to us, an independent Baptist church that we enjoyed. And I think that, and I still have friends there today. Honestly, I think that's probably one of the better independent Baptist churches that I've been to. Um, but I don't think there's a perfect church out there, no matter um, what denomination or anything like that. All of them have their flaws, just like we do, because their churches are made up of human beings, and that's just the way things are. But we really liked this one church. It was an independent Baptist church. We wound up like getting involved in some of the ministries there. I think we wound up basically making that our primary church, where we would go there every Sunday. Um, we I think convinced our dad, or we asked him if it was okay for us to like start going there every Sunday, and then like on Wednesday nights and stuff like that, we would go to this Mennonite church, because he still wanted us to visit that church as well. So we would do that, like maybe at least every Wednesday or every other Wednesday we would visit that Mennonite church while going to this Baptist church on Sundays. And we like got involved in the bus ministry, where they would bring kids in from like inner city or trailer parks or different areas around the church, and bring them to church and have children's church and all that good stuff. We would help in the junior church there. We would wind up going like on visitation, trying to like either do soul winning, like trying to get bring the gospel to people, going door to door, telling people about Jesus, and then also we would go and like try to like we would visit our current bus kids, the ones on our certain bus routes, and like let them, try to encourage them to come to church, and then see if they had any friends that would want to come to church and stuff like that. And then, well, as we were there for a few months and we became close friends with a lot of people, honestly, that was one of the best like summers in my life as a teenager. I was 18 going on 19 that summer, and and it was a really good year because like I feel like I experienced some freedom for the first time in my life of like just you know when you first move out of your parents' household, you get that sense of freedom, like, oh, I'm kind of living on my own, even though we were still living in my parents' house and everything like that. But I still had that like sense of freedom, and like we could kind of live a little bit with some more wiggle room, and like making our own decisions and things like that. It was a little bit scary too, but I think it was like a lot. It was liberating as well. It felt good, and then we made a lot of friends, like I said, in that church. Had a good group of friends and stuff, and one of our friends, which was my sister's best friend at the time, that she made at that church. Well, she had like she came from a broken home. That girl that was her friend, she didn't really like have a good relationship with her parents and stuff like that. I think she had like gone to a girls' home, a Christian girls' home, and then had a born again experience, and then she wound up like serving in this like internship for like a prison ministry at that church. And so we became good friends with her, and then that girl had an older couple that she looked up to kind of like as her spiritual parents or whatever, and then they kind of brought us in as well as like some spiritual parents, kind of like while my family and my parents were away, and they kind of like just encouraged us and were like mentors to us and spiritual guides and things like that. And I started like after going to this church, because we kept hearing these messages preached about like if are you 100% sure that you're going to go to heaven when you die, or are you like maybe not 100% sure, maybe there's a chance that you think you could die in a sinful state where you don't know Jesus Christ and you go to hell. So that was a big thing that they preached in the Independent Fundamental Baptist movement. And like it was almost every Sunday, like they had an altar call after the message where they would ask you to raise your hand if you knew you were 100% certain that you were on your way to heaven, that you knew Jesus Christ as your Savior and all that stuff. And at the time when we first went to that church, I didn't really completely buy into that, because I thought like I was like, yeah, I mean, I feel like you still have to like do good works to stay saved, because that's how I grew up. Like that's what we believed growing up, is that yeah, you need to believe on Jesus as like he died to make it possible for us to go to heaven, but I still believed that like you had to keep certain rules and commandments and things like that, and if you couldn't like live like the devil and still be saved. That's essentially what I believed. I didn't really necessarily believe in like being born again at the time. I was never really taught about that. But the more I started going to these churches and I started hearing these messages and like hearing Ephesians 2:8 and 9 preached about like that we're saved by grace through faith. I hope I'm not getting that backwards. Or no, I think it's by faith. No, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to try to misquote it. So, but not of works, lest any man should boast, things like that. So, yeah, I started hearing that stuff, and it made me start to question, like, well, maybe I'm not saved. Maybe I don't really know Jesus, like, and maybe I need to get that right. And then I started seeing these things about being born again, like reading those passages. And so, long story short, I wound up, like on a Sunday morning, I got to the point where almost every night I could barely sleep, and I was like thinking the rapture would happen. I was so scared that I would wind up going to hell. And so I would like pray for like God to like give me guidance and like to save me if I wasn't saved. But even then I wasn't sure if that really counted when I was praying those prayers. But then whenever on a Sunday morning I was like, okay, I just need to like get this off my chest. I need to make this public, and I went to the altar when they did the altar call. I don't remember what was preached or anything like that. I remember I was teary-eyed, and I told the pastor after the message. He came up to me when I walked up, and I said, like, I don't think I'm saved. And then he said, well, I think you know what to do. And so he like knelt there with me with his hand on my shoulder as I prayed, and I asked Jesus to come into my heart, and I got saved. So that is kind of like the introduction. I think that that's probably a good stopping point for this episode, is where I had that born again experience. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next episode. If you enjoyed what you heard here, please like and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Have a good day.